Episode 2, Whispers of Doubt. We see Grace's small, cozy kitchen. She's preparing breakfast, smiling to herself as she remembers her day with Paul. Her mother, a gentle but hard-working woman, notices Grace's smile and asks teasingly, "You're glowing this morning. What's got you so happy?" Grace hesitates, then admits shyly, "I met someone. His name is Paul." She describes him, her voice tinged with excitement and awe. Her mother listens quietly but warns, "Be careful, Grace. Life has taught us to know our place. A man from that world." She doesn't finish, but Grace senses the worry behind her mother's words. Paul's inner conflict. Paul's elegant family home. Paul sits at breakfast with his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Stevens, a wealthy couple known for their high social standards. Paul's mother, an elegant woman with a sharp gaze, discusses the previous night's family friend gathering, where whispers about Paul seeing someone from the other side of town had reached her. She looks at him pointedly. "Paul, is there any truth to these rumors?" Paul tries to dodge the question but finally admits, "I met someone, yes. Her name is Grace." He's hesitant to reveal more, sensing the disapproval. His mother's face stiffens. "Paul, we've taught you the importance of reputation. A man in your position must be careful about who he associates with." His father adds sternly, "You have a responsibility, Paul. Marry someone who can uphold the family name. Think of your future." Paul clenches his jaw but doesn't argue, instead quietly excusing himself from the table. A chance meeting in town. That afternoon, Grace heads to the market to buy groceries, still feeling the weight of her mother's cautious words. She's deep in thought when she bumps into Paul, who has been wandering around town, looking for an escape from his family's pressures. Grace is startled but smiles. "Paul, what are you doing here?" Paul laughs, shrugging. "Maybe I was hoping to run into you." They walk together, buying fruits and chatting, the chemistry between them undeniable. Paul reveals a bit about his morning confrontation with his family, and Grace listens sympathetically, feeling her own insecurities rise. She sighs. "Paul, maybe they're right. We're from different worlds. Maybe this won't be easy." But Paul gently takes her hand, looking her in the eyes. "I don't care where you come from, Grace. I care about who you are." The sincerity in his voice reassures her, and they share a quiet, heartfelt moment, drawing strength from each other. Friends with doubts. Paul's friends, James and Linda, at a trendy cafe discussing Paul's growing attachment to Grace. James, a childhood friend of Paul's, shakes his head disapprovingly, saying, "He's throwing away everything for a girl he barely knows. It doesn't make sense." Linda, however, defends Paul. "Maybe she's different. Maybe she's exactly what he needs." But James remains adamant, convinced that Grace is out of place in Paul's world. Their conversation hints at the challenges ahead, as Paul's own social circle becomes skeptical of Grace. Grace's family's concerns. Later that evening, Grace returns home and tells her mother more about Paul, mentioning his kindness and the genuine connection she feels with him. Her mother is silent, listening closely. Finally, she says, "Love is a powerful thing, Grace, but remember, money and power come with expectations. Can you live with those?" Grace nods, though doubt flickers in her eyes. She feels torn between her heart's pull toward Paul and her loyalty to her family's modest life. Paul's secret decision. Meanwhile, Paul is sitting alone in his bedroom, contemplating his future. He looks around at the symbols of wealth, expensive furniture, designer clothes, and family portraits. Yet he feels a strange emptiness. He realizes he's more himself with Grace than he ever is in this world of privilege. Determined, Paul decides to ignore his family's disapproval and continue seeing Grace, even if it means sneaking around. He knows his feelings for her are too deep to ignore. Their first date. Paul and Grace plan their first official date, choosing a quiet spot in a secluded park to avoid prying eyes. Grace wears a simple, flowing dress, and Paul arrives with a small bouquet of wildflowers, his nervous smile melting her heart. They talk openly, sharing stories from their childhoods and discussing their dreams. Grace admits she wants to start a charity to support struggling families in her community, and Paul is captivated by her passion. He promises to help her make that dream a reality. They share their first kiss under the moonlight, a tender moment that solidifies their commitment to each other. Backlash from family. The next day, word of their date reaches Paul's family through a friend who spotted them together. His mother is furious, confronting him as soon as he walks in the door. She exclaims, "Paul, this is unacceptable. We've done everything for you, and this is how you repay us." Paul retorts, "You want me to marry for status, not for love. But I want a real connection, and I found that with Grace." His mother's face contorts with anger and disappointment. His father remains silent but clearly disapproves. Paul, feeling isolated, storms out of the house. Grace's insecurity grows. Meanwhile, Grace's insecurities grow as she becomes aware of the disdain from Paul's world. She overhears whispers in town about how she's not good enough for him, causing her to doubt her place in his life. When they meet again, she hesitates, telling Paul, "Maybe this isn't meant to be. You belong in a different world." But Paul reassures her, holding her close. "Grace, I'm here because I want to be. I don't care what others think." The promise. In a quiet, emotional moment, Paul makes a promise to Grace. "Whatever happens, I won't let anything or anyone come between us. This love, it's worth fighting for." Grace, with tears in her eyes, nods. She realizes that despite the challenges, her feelings for Paul are worth the risks. They embrace, sharing a moment of hope and unity that seems unbreakable. As the episode draws to a close, we see Paul returning home to find his family waiting for him with disapproving faces. His father, looking him in the eye, says, "If you keep seeing that girl, you'll lose everything."